Welcome back to Hopeful by Nature. This is the podcast where we inspire hope by talking to people around the globe who are connecting kids and communities to the natural world in order to care for and protect the places where we play. In our most recent episode, I had the chance to learn about a concept that I understood intuitively, but I'd never heard before. That's Ghar Se Bhago. It's a Hindi phrase. Translated literally, it means run away from home. But it's not about running away from something. It's about running towards something. The discomfort of the unfamiliar. The growth that lives just outside the front door, and the version of yourself that you can only find when you're somewhere new. My guest today is an outdoor educator based in India. She grew up surrounded by mountains, going on hikes up 300-year-old hill forts with her dad and friends almost every other weekend. She's gone on to become an alumni of the National Outdoor Leadership School and facilitator, working with young people around the world in India, Australia, Thailand, Singapore, and the United Kingdom. What I didn't expect was how much of our conversation would be about what happens when that philosophy meets the real world, when outdoor spaces feel inaccessible or irrelevant. This is the first episode I recorded for this podcast, which means it's a little less polished than some of the others. I'm choosing to keep it that way, because what Krishna has to say is too good to leave on the cutting room floor. So whenever you're ready, run away from home, and I'll meet you out there. I'm lucky enough to be joined today by Krishna Patel from all the way across the world in India. So Krishna, welcome, and thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm really excited to be here.
What was it like to grow up in India? I'm sure that for our listeners here in North America, it's a pretty different experience.
Yeah, I think I was pretty lucky because so I grew up in a joint family, meaning my dad and his brother's family, we all lived in the same house. So I grew up with about 10 members of the family with me, and my uncle and my dad were fans of traveling. And I think, if I'm not wrong, my uncle would love cycling and he would like hiking, whereas my dad would love backpacking, staying in hostels when he goes travel outside. And he introduced my mom to that. So since I was a child, Pune is a city I grew up in. It's very close to Mumbai. And the mountain range that divides Pune and Mumbai is called the Western Ghats. And the Western Ghats, particularly in the state that I grew up in, is called Sayadri mountain range. It has historical significance about which we learned in our classrooms. It's mentioned during the colonial times, pre-colonial times as well, and we have about 300 hill forts. So when you go hiking, once you reach the top, there's a massive fort ruins that you can explore. Now, the hikes range from anywhere from 20-minute hike up to about 3 days long. You can decide how you want to do it. And there was this one hike which is very close to my house. You drive about 45 minutes and you're there. So my dad would gather my friends and me. He would like, okay, we're going for the hike. You get so much time to reach the top. Once you're there, if everybody makes it to the top, you get treated with snacks. And we would love chocolates, we would love chips, and we're like, yeah, we're ready to go hike up on a Sunday, party at the top, explore the fort, come back, and then we'd be treated with food. So as a child, I would do that almost every alternate weekend, and I was lucky enough to be introduced to that. Apart from that, our school would host summer camp in which they would take us for a day's hike at a fort. Like I said, my dad and his brother enjoyed hiking, so they would plan trips and they would take us for a day's hike elsewhere as well. And I think traveling was just ingrained in me because they were like, okay, we're going to step out. This is what we're going to do. If we went on a holiday, it would be like, walk on the beach, see animals. They would plan trips which were not necessarily staying in a hotel, but staying in an eco resort where, you would be introduced to snakes, insects, and things like that. So as a child, I remember I was extremely afraid of bugs. I think I was about 11, 12 years old, and my dad had taken us to, it was a family holiday to a national park. And I would just not sit under a tree because the bugs kept on falling wherever you sat. So once he was like, you know what, we're going to try this. You just sit here for 10 minutes, let a bug land on you, and then we'll see what happens. And nothing happened. And since that day, there has been a transformation in me where if a bug is flying, I'm like, okay, it's harmless. It's not going to do anything. It'll just go its way. So there were situations like this where I was lucky enough to be introduced to the nature through my family itself. So when you go to villages or you go to different places as well, I think there is some or the other connection that people have with the environment. They just need to realize it.
It doesn't sound that dissimilar from the connections that a lot of young people build with nature in North America, where they're really being guided into different environments by their families. They're being influenced by their parents' relationship with nature. That's so
Yeah.
cool that your dad and your uncle had such a close relationship with the outdoors and were able to connect you with that. Is
Yeah.
it pretty common in India for people to grow up in joined families like that?
Yes, joint family culture is pretty common. I would say now people are opting for nuclear families, but I think, majority of India is still with their joint families. And just to point out the relationship with nature, if you go to the rural parts of India, I think it's rooted in them. There will be rivers and the village kids will just be jumping on it. Like I said, it's summers right now. If I take you to a village right now,
Yeah.
you'll just see people in the rivers or in the wells. They just like, it's their pastime. And they're some of the best swimmers you'll have in the country.
Do you
Yeah.
remember going to some pretty incredible swimming holes as a kid?
I grew up in a city and I do not have any family members that live in a village like my other friends
Sure.
or family had. So I decided to take swim lessons in the city. But as a child, I was taught, if you're drowning, you learn how to swim. And I think that became a little traumatic for me where I was like, I don't want to learn swimming at all. It's okay. I do water sports. So when I have a PFD on, I'm like an Olympic level swimmer. The moment it's off, I'm like, what do I do now? So I guess I became more of a land baby where name any land sport and I must have done it.
That's
But
really
now,
interesting.
at the age of 28, I'm taking swim lessons again just to see if I can get over my fear of water.
Oh, that's really cool you're taking that leap. Tell me more about this concept of Ghar Se Bhago. How did you come across that concept, and what does it really mean for you in your life today?
So, in 2017, I did my Trip Leader India course through NOLS, and it was a 21-day backpacking trip, and it took place in the Indian Himalayas in the state of Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand is a state which has the Himalayas, but they also have some amazing national parks, and India's most known rafting also takes place in that state. So it's got these multiple adventurous opportunities that you can do. And once we were done with our backpacking course for 21 days, the friends we made during the program, one of our friend knew somebody who runs a campsite, like an eco stay in one of the national parks. And we're like, we can just go. It's off season. I know a person. Let's just go stay there for 4 days. Enjoy. We've done such a hectic backpacking trip. Let's just relax.
Sure.
So we went there and they do wildlife tours, they do mountain biking, they do rafting, they do everything. And they used to have this sticker called Ghar Se Bhago. And the moment I went there, they gave me that sticker and I put it on my Nalgene. And I resonated with it is because number one, post that course is when my real outdoor education journey began and the travel increased. That resonated with me is because when you step outside the house, it's also a little bit of your growth zone. It's not your comfort zone. So Ghar Se Bhago always reminded me to take that leap, get into slightly uncomfortable but growth areas, which challenge myself to learn more, do new things, figure things out. And that's how Ghar Se Bhago has become my motto where, my family is like, when are you coming home? And I'm like, okay, maybe 2 weeks later, but I'm going here, I'm going to go there. At this point, I think you're just going to consider the house as a paying guest place because you just come eat food and you leave. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. So
It's good to get out of the house and explore the
yes.
world. And it sounds like you've done a lot of that. You mentioned your NOLS course. For those folks that are listening at home that don't know what NOLS is, NOLS stands for the National Outdoor Leadership School. And Krishna and I share that in common. So Krishna mentioned doing a 21-day backpacking course. I did a 30-day sea kayaking and sailing course in the Pacific Northwest. Totally different environments, totally different experiences. It sounds like there's a lot of similarities in some of the values that we took away from that experience? I mean, for me, I've always really leaned heavily into the NOLS 4-7-1 leadership model, which looks at 4 leadership roles, 7 leadership skills, and 1 signature leadership style. What are some of the things that you feel like are big takeaways that you carry with you from your NOLS experience?
Uh, so, to give you a bit of context of the Indian outdoor education industry now, we have
Yeah.
these mountaineering institutes that are very well known. Now we've got some about 5 to 6 of them. And initially, they were started by the army for their army training. Since we have the Himalayas, there are vantage points, rescue missions, things like that. And then it was open to the civilians. I did my mountaineering course as soon as I turned 6, and you have 2 levels. One is the basic mountaineering course, where you get oriented with rock, ice, and snow. And then when you do the advanced mountaineering course, it's more of a little bit of more technicalities. And before my nose journey, that is the course I had done. And it was heavily focused on technical skills, resilience, endurance. You need to get from point A to point B. Of course, it was run by the army, so you had a little bit more of the army approach, but discipline is a must. You have to get up at this time, you have to cover so much in so much time, and things like that. Then I did rock climbing courses. I didn't do rock climbing courses, but I joined people who were climbers and learn a little bit skills from them. And through them, I learned about NOLS, where they were like, NOLS does this first aid course. They do hiking courses as well, and there's a course for Indians. And then when I looked up, NOLS still operated from the dollar point of view. So when you converted it to INR, it could create a hole in your pocket. So I was a little bit reluctant.
Sure.
People had said NOLS is one of the best schools to learn for. And I was at a stage where I was always keen for professional development, do new courses. And we realized that NOLS does give you scholarships. So I applied for the course, got a good scholarship, and like I said, did the 21-day backpacking course. And the biggest difference that I saw was that NOLS focused a lot more on interpersonal skills. While the mountaineering course was all about going from point A to point B, NOLS was more like, what do you learn when you go from point A to point B? It's okay if you don't get to point B, but what is your journey like? What are you learning out of it? How are you being a good leader as well? So, introspect about yourself. Think about what you want to be after this course. How do you want to lead your classes? So that was an eye-opener for me personally, as it introduced me to that. Okay, initially when I used to work with students, I'd be like, no, you have to make that climb, you have to get to the top. But after the NOLS course, for me it was like, it's okay, you got 1 feet above the ground, that's fantastic, you got over your fears. That was the shift that I saw in myself through this course. And that was my biggest takeaway, that the, like people say, journey is more important than the destination. And that's what
Sure.
I've taken away from the NOLS course, where how do you interact with the environment, how do you interact with your fellow participants. So transformative journey, I would say NOLS was the one that did it for me.
You touch on a few points there. You were talking about the growth zone, really stepping outside of your comfort zone, trying new things, expanding your capacity, growing your skill set. In outdoor education, we also talk a good amount about the panic zone, which is
Yes.
really easy to trip out of the growth zone and into the panic zone. It sounds
Yeah.
like that's really what you're describing. Like,
Yes.
walking away from your NOLS course, you realized the value of facilitating experiences that help keep people in their growth zone. That's, I would imagine, really important for helping to encourage young people to build a relationship with nature.
Yeah.
I know you've worked all over the world, in the United States, in Australia, in Singapore,
Yeah.
in Thailand, in the United Kingdom. What are some of the ways that you've seen young people in their growth zone build a relationship with nature?
I think lately the biggest trend you see is that the students are not able to live away from their technology, their phones, their laptops. And lately, most of the programs that I've done, either the school puts up a restriction that no phones allowed, if the phones are allowed, then I just pray that there's no network at all for them to engage in. Recently, I did a couple of programs where phones were with the students, but because there was no network, there was nothing much that they could do. And throughout the program, I slowly started to see a trend where day one, day two, it was like, "Oh, why is there no network? What is happening? Can somebody just give us Wi-Fi?" And they'll be like, "Krishna, can you give us some hotspot?" And I'm like, "No, I cannot do that, blah, blah, blah. Here's some cards, we can play cards." And then from the third, fourth day, the phones are lying somewhere. They're just engaged in playing cards with each other, up to a point where I have to be like, "Hey guys, you forgot your phone here." I think that was their growth zone, where initially it was that discomfort of, not having network. What are we going to do? How do we live without phones? To getting into that growth zone, understanding a lot more about their peers that they've studied with, learning about each other, which I guess in school situations they couldn't, because you have laptops, you have phones, you have assignments, things like that. And just at the end of the trip, it's like, okay, I don't need my phone anymore. I can live without my phone. Technology is not everything. So I think that was the biggest change I've seen them go from, the discomfort to being in their growth zone.
When we allow people to sit in discomfort, feeling so uncomfortable with lacking access to technology, lacking access to a social network online, young people were able to get through those withdrawal symptoms, if you will, and build a social network with each other. And I think that's really one of the true values of spending time outside with young people, is just reconnecting with each other socially. By connecting with the natural world, we also connect with people.
So I think that's where the skill of the facilitator comes in, about how they draw boundaries and how are they able to use a device which ideally they wouldn't want it to have.
We were just talking a little bit about digital detox, and you were mentioning when you were working in Thailand, this group of grade 10 students were able to really creatively use their technology. Was that helping them to build that stronger relationship with the outdoors in your mind?
Yes, I did think so, because with this particular school, there was not a policy where we could ask the teachers, can you collect the students' phones, maybe give them for an hour in the evening as such. Then we had to be creative and figure out, okay, they're going to have their phones. They don't need Wi-Fi or anything to listen to music. So how do we manage it where maybe during learnings they are focused on it, and when it's like downtime, they're making use of the spaces creatively. So we created certain boundaries where we made a deal, an agreement, where when we're doing an activity, when briefings are going on, we're doing reflections, etc. And since they were almost young adults, we could also put it as, we're going to treat you as adults. If you don't, then we might go back to the traditional way. We're like, hey children, let's keep our phones aside. So you can decide how do you want to run this workshop. So that's a deal we agreed upon, that during workshops, no phones. During downtime, maybe we'll focus more on cards, playing with each other. And when we're traveling in the bus, that's the only time you can listen to music. And lastly, you'll use your phones for alarms. So then we are not coming and waking you up. You're old enough to wake yourselves and get ready. So those are the agreements we formed. And then there were certain students who were interested in photography, filmmaking. And my co-leader was somebody who was amazing at photography. So he was like, okay, I can help you take better photos. I'll teach you a little bit about photography. And I spoke to my program manager, and I just thought of, is it possible to arrange for a projector on the last day. They had a laptop. So we were like, okay, can you arrange for a projector? Then maybe I'll run this idea. And they were like, yes, the program that you're doing, we can arrange for a projector. And then we brief the students that you have your phones. We're not going to control how you use it, but with your friends, you can form mini groups. And on the last day, you're going to showcase your journey through the lens of filmmaking. So there would be one person who would be extremely engaged in like, we'll click it this way, we'll click it that way. Then there would be one in the group who's like, we should pause like this, and then this is how we'll do transitions. So it was really interesting to see where some students just focused on some really cool transitions where hands are coming like this, they're folding, and then the moment they leave, it's a new place. Some came up with a storyline where they just did a skit and recorded it.
That sounds fun.
Although for maybe year 10s, it would be like, what is this childish behavior? They were all really keen, like, we have something cool to present. And there was one group that just specifically opened later an Instagram account through their school handle to just put up all the videos that the groups had presented.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, so that's where it was really interesting about how photography also is a great skill. Yeah. And since we had a person who would do photography and students were keen, you can just use it rather than restricting that learning opportunity.
Yeah, what I really like about that example that you gave is there's several different things that are happening as a facilitator. One, you're creating these really clear boundaries around like, when is it okay to use technology? When is it not okay to use technology? What is the use of technology for and not for? And it sounds like you really came to those agreements through co-creation with young people, which strengthens trust within your group, strengthens rapport within your group, and can help young people to feel, in their comfort zone in this new and novel outdoor environment. The other thing that I really like about that is you were using a strengths-based leadership approach, identifying, hey, my co-leader has this amazing skill. The young people that we're working with have this incredible interest. Let's figure out how we can thread the needle between those two interests. That's really amazing. As facilitators, as educators, as parents, as leaders, it really behooves us to identify what are the motivators of the young people that we're working with in the outdoors, and how can we strengthen those motivators to build that relationship with nature. My question, for you next is really around how do you go about inspiring young people to come together as a team to care for and protect the places where we play. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think I'll spend some time articulating it.
My dog is barking. Excuse me.
A thought. I think your dog came in at the right time, giving us something.
She's one of the things that helps me stay connected to nature and at least grounded and humble.
I don't know. I'm not really sure if I will also answer the question, but it's just a thought that I've been having lately is that outdoor education is still not accessible to all at the moment, according to me. I still work with schools only, and I do feel like it's just limited to private schools. The students that I've worked with have largely grown in urban areas where even a simple thing like their shoe getting dirty, immediately a wet wipe comes out and they need to clean it. So thinking about how do I connect their experiences to nature, for me lately it's just been having them get used to getting dirty. Like the moment their hands get dirty, they can't touch anything. And my entire goal has been like, it's okay, your hands will get dirty. We can wipe it off on our t-shirt. It's okay, and we can move forward. Another instance that comes to my head is I was on a rafting program, and on day one, we did rafting. The clothes got wet, and we were going to do rafting the next few days as well. And the students come to me and they were like, Krishna, do you have a plastic bag? And I'm like, why do you need a bag? And they're like, oh, our clothes got wet, so we just want to put it in and put it in a suitcase, put it away. And I was like, hey, it's just day one. We have 8 more days to go. We're going to be rafting again. And there's something called as the sun. Why don't we dry it? So, the whole thing about how there is no concept of using nature as something to dry their clothes. The first instinct they had was like, we'll just put it away. The cloth is dirty. We can't use it anymore. Whereas I was trying to coach them, like, we'll dry it. Then you can decide, do you want to reuse it or do you want to pack it away? But if you pack it right, it's going to get moldy. Then you're going to go back after 8 days. It's going to be a long flight. You won't like the smell. So just small things like these, where it's all about just getting dirty and seeing what you have around you, is what I've been coaching students about, rather than intentionally planning something to get them close to nature. So maybe unintentionally, I have been drawing it back to nature, but in getting everyone together, finding that learning moment and facilitating the experience.
I really appreciate your perspective on access. We have really similar issues in North America, like on several of the points that you talked about. Like one, there's an economic barrier to accessing the outdoors where you need to have equipment, you need to have instruction, you need to have experience, you need to have transportation. All of those things cost money. So the folks that are spending the majority of their time outside or really taking advantage of public outdoor space are primarily those people that have economic privilege. So there are all kinds of different organizations, communities that are really working to try and dismantle those barriers. It seems like NOLS is doing an incredible job by providing this NOLS instructor course specifically for young people from India in India. That's incredible. NOLS started in North America quite a long time ago to try to help raise the next generation of outward bound instructors. And now it has this global reach, and they're improving equitable access by having these specific programs. But you also mentioned dirty shoes. That's a topic that comes up a lot when I'm taking young people outside. If you look at research around young people's access to nature and their relationship with nature, young people that grow up in urban environments that lack access to nature before the age of 10 years old are significantly more likely to experience irrational senses of fear and disgust. So having a wet t-shirt after a day of rafting or having a dirty shoe after a day of hiking could feel disgusting to a young person that's really lacked that access to the outdoors. So it behooves us as facilitators to, again, figure out how can we help people expand their comfort zone by trying new things in the outdoors. And in addition to that, how can we keep it physically and emotionally safe? So I love the idea of being creative around, like, resources are in the environment around you, like sunlight, to help you feel more comfortable, to help you feel safer in that environment. So if you were going to say one thing to our listeners today, whether they're in North America or whether they're in India, that they could do to help connect the next generation to the outdoors as soon as they're off of this podcast, what would you advise them to do?
I largely talk in the Indian context because that's where I've been. And for my listeners in India, I think the biggest thing I'm going to say is, let's start with cleanliness. Let's not litter and just take our trash with us. Again, this also comes with schools that I work with where it's discussed, where just putting it in their backpack also seems disgusting to them, but rather let's accept it that we don't want to pollute this beautiful space. And the second thing I would encourage is just carry your own shopping bag. It's a small step, but when you go to the grocery store, I don't know what shopping malls you have, maybe Costco, carry 4 or 5 bags if you're going to do bulk shopping, but carry your own. They're cool tote bags, and I think tote bags are cool as well. So just carry your own shopping bag is what I'd like to say.
But it's really interesting you mentioned this concept of pack it in, pack it out, not necessarily translating to the Indian culture. Where do you think that stems from? Is there something historical or cultural that might be influencing that sentiment? Carrying your trash or putting your trash in your backpack inspires people to have a sense of disgust. Like, where does that disgust come from?
When I was doing my master's, there was one of my fellow course mate who came up with this interesting research that somebody had done. Is that expecting a dustbin to be around? So I don't know which part of the world, but there was actually a park that put a dustbin at every 11 footsteps, and then that changed the outlook of the park because it was no longer a nature spot, but just lined up with dustbins everywhere. So I think firstly, it's like the human notion that, the moment I have rubbish, I want to put it somewhere. So as long as it's not in my bag because trash is dirty, how can it go in my pristine bag? This is my most expensive backpack. I cannot make it dirty with rubbish that I have created. So I think it's that mindset of just accepting that, okay, my rubbish, let me put it in my backpack. I can pack it neatly. I can have a different thing to put it inside and just manage my waste. Maybe it comes from there. I'm unsure. But I have seen disgust in people's eyes. Like, okay, I've not created this rubbish. Why am I responsible for it?
Particularly if you're out in a public space, and there's trash, garbage, rubbish, whatever descriptor you want to use on the ground. I can see people being unmotivated to pick it up, particularly if they don't know where it came from. But to your point, if we're not packing out what we pack in, whether we're in the front country or the back country, we're not leaving that place better than we found it. And no matter how far away we run away from home, back to that concept of Ghar Se Bhago, we need to make sure that we're leaving those spaces better than we found them so that future generations can continue to care for and protect them. Well, Krishna, I really appreciate you taking the chance to chat with me today. It's been such a pleasure learning about your experience. I'd love to continue the conversation, learn a little bit more from you about your experience in outdoor and environmental education. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners before we sign off for the day?
There are so many similarities between North America and India as well, particularly how NOLS is also trying to bring everything together. But there was this really interesting thing I realized when I did my master's is how culture does affect how you design outdoor programs as well and participation. Like we spoke about access, right? During my master's, I was doing an assignment about program designing, and I was thinking of my past experiences about how when I worked in US, Australia, people were so enthusiastic about backpacking. These countries had the infrastructure to just pack your things and go out. No need to, some places didn't require booking campsite as well. But when I thought of doing it in India, it was why am I struggling so much? Where is the infrastructure? And similarly with student participation as well, majority of the people wouldn't sign up for a program which would require hard work. And that got me thinking about why is it like this? Why is it such a massive difference? And then I realized through all the readings, research, that maybe culturally we were never introduced to hiking as a leisure, but more of a livelihood where you had to walk kilometers to fetch water, herd your sheep, things like that. So when you go to a certain place to make it accessible and be like, hey, I'm going to take you hiking, I guess the parents' first response would be, why would we do that?
Yeah.
Is it really necessary? We've been doing this for years. So maybe as program designers, also understanding who you're designing the program for, because what necessarily may work somewhere else may not work here. So maybe for people, like I said, if I want to do an experiential learning program for people from the rural part of India, maybe I wouldn't take them hiking or something like that. Maybe I would do it more cultural based, games based. Whereas for the urban people in India, I would do more of hiking so that they can get out of the city and connect with the nature more. So I think that's just the thought I wanted to share, is like how culture also influences who your participants are.
That's such an incredible point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Like cultural responsive teaching practices, culturally
Hmm.
responsive program design is so incredibly important. And it sounds like,
Yeah.
there's there's a wide array of diverse lived experiences and cultural
Mhm.
perspectives in India. And the same is true in North America. We
Yeah.
have communities like mine where I grew up where spending time in nature is a selfish act. Like you go out and you spend time in nature for yourself, for your own well-being, for your own physical fitness. And that selfish
Hmm.
act, not a cultural value of so many other communities. Spending
Yeah.
time outside in nature in another community is likely going to be a collectivist act where it's like the reason we're
Yeah.
outside to be together. We're at a barbecue, we're at a soccer game, we're at a basketball game, we're playing a sport. Similarly, for another culture, it may be, hey, we're outside to help care for and protect this space. We're engaging in cultural
Hmm.
practices, we're engaging in
Yeah.
harvesting of herbs or vegetables or fruits, we're engaging in, prescribed maintenance of the landscape. So not all experiences in the outdoors are created equal, nor are they all
Hmm.
going to be appropriate for every community. So I think,
Yeah.
to your point, leaders, parents, teachers, outdoor educators can really think critically about what are the lived experiences of the young people that they're working with outside, and how can they design programs that are
Yeah.
going to be culturally relevant, responsive, and appropriate.
This was That's one big learning I took away, because I like to design programs as well. And I no longer think of like, okay, I've done this in the past, it worked, it'll work here as well. Now I have to look at who the participants are, what background do they come from, what do they want to learn, what does the school want them to learn. Customizing every program is helpful rather than having a set program for the clients to choose from.
When working with neurodivergent young people, like young people on the autism
Mm,
spectrum with ADHD or with emotional regulation
yeah.
challenges, maybe past trauma, you've met one person who's neurodivergent, you've met one person. It's the same
Yeah.
thing with taking a group of people outside. You've met one group, you've met one
Yeah.
group. You need to really assess the needs and the values of those young people before you
Yeah.
take them outside. You mentioned for a lot of communities in India, maybe that don't necessarily have like a socially economic affluent
Mm,
background, that spending time outside served a purpose. It was for gathering water,
yeah.
for gathering food, and for working outside.
Mm,
I remember when I was early in my outdoor education career in San Diego County, I worked with a young man who had come to the United States as a refugee from East Africa. And when we started taking him
okay.
outside to engage in all different kinds of experiences, surfing, snowboarding, rock climbing, mountain biking, what his mom said was spending time outside is for people with too much time on their hands. Camping is for
Mm,
other people. Like we don't, that's not something that we should be doing. He was incredibly motivated to work with us. He found a way to speak to his mom's values of culture, of
yeah.
education, of family, and to continue engaging with us. He ended up receiving a Gates
Mhm.
Millennium Scholarship after 4 years of participating in our
Wow.
program. And the interviewer who awarded him that scholarship told him that it was his outdoor education experience that set him apart from other applicants. So that really
Wow.
speaks to the value of stepping outside of your comfort
Hmm.
zone, trying new things, expanding what feels comfortable for
Yeah.
you, even if it's not
Mhm.
necessarily something that has lived on through your experience over time. We have the ability to bring on new skills, to expand our horizons, to expand our perspectives, and that also expands our opportunity.
That is
Great.
really impressive.
He ended up going to Stanford. He had the ability to continue
Yeah.
receiving scholarship through a PhD level, which was incredible. But,
Mm,
outdoor education was seen as not valuable to him and his family. And it ended
yeah.
up having a
Yeah.
lasting impact on his professional trajectory and the rest of his life. So I think that really speaks to the importance, again, of connecting this next generation with nature, of speaking to the values of the communities that we want to serve, and ensuring that the experiences that we're designing and providing are culturally responsive and relevant.
Yes, so well said.
Well,
Thanks for that.
it's my pleasure. Thank you for coming on and speaking with me today. I've really, really enjoyed the
Yeah.
opportunity to chat with you, Krishna. This has been so much fun.
To be honest, this has boosted my confidence as well. So thank you so much for giving me this platform.
I feel honored to have held a space where you can step into your growth zone with me, expand that comfort zone, and try some new things. So thank you, Krishna. Krishna ended our conversation by asking me to think about the communities we design outdoor programs for and whether we're really designing for them or just for ourselves. That question has stayed with me. You've met one group, she said. You've met one group. What works in one cultural context might completely miss the mark in another. The child from a rural Indian village who grew up walking kilometers to fetch water isn't going to connect with hiking as recreation. The kid who grew up in an urban apartment doesn't have the same sensory vocabulary as someone who spent summers running through the woods. None of that means nature is off limits. It means we have to show up differently. It means we have to run towards the discomfort of not already having the answer. That's Ghar Se Bhago. If something in this conversation moved you, please share this episode. You can read more about my conversation with Krishna and see photos from her work in India by visiting our website at wildwardinstitute.net. That's www.wildwardinstitute.net. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Hopeful by Nature. Next time on the podcast, my guest grew up in rural Missouri in a log cabin built by her family. The kind of childhood where you learn to read animal tracks, rode your bike 2 miles down the road to a fishing hole, and once nearly called the police because you heard what sounded like a murder in the woods. It turned out to be a bobcat. She went on to spend her career making outdoor spaces accessible to people who have historically been told those spaces aren't for them. She built adaptive recreation programs. She promoted entire states as accessible recreation destinations, and then in 2020, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and found herself, without choosing it, to be a member of the community she devoted her career to serving. Her name is Susie Schroer. And here's a moment from our conversation.
Might get emotional again, but thinking about some of the students with disabilities, it was very common to hear them shout after coming down from a rock climb, like, I did it. If I can do this, I can do anything. Right?
Oh.
I can do this. What else can I do? What else can I push myself to do?
That's next time on Hopeful by Nature.